revealed. That's number 2. And then verse 8 is the third question, and that's what the reading is about. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? This third question is talking about the fact that at some point, God will need a spokesman. At some point, God will need a mouthpiece. At some point, God will need a vocal cord through which he can communicate his counsel and communicate his will upon the face of the earth. And the reason why there was a vacancy, are you there? Are you there? Yes. The reason why there was a vacancy for which there's an advertisement now, who shall declare his generation, was because he himself was taken from prison. He was taken from judgment. He was cut off from the earth before his time. He became a victim of judgment. He became a victim of justice. So because of that, he needs a vocal cord through which he can communicate his mind. He needs a mouthpiece through which his counsel can be revealed. And so the book of Acts chapter 1 verse 1 reveals the 2 aspects of the workings of Jesus that is supposed. There were so many aspects of the workings of Jesus, so many aspects. Are you there? Yeah. Jesus raised the dead. Jesus did all kinds of things. But in order for us to enter into the reality or the possibility of that aspect of Jesus raising the dead, Jesus healing the sick, it's in the second class, which is the things that Jesus did. All right? So the first requirement is the things that Jesus taught, the things that Jesus said. And we are seeing in the book of Isaiah chapter 53 verse 8 that at some point there will be a need for Jesus to have a vocal cord to communicate his will, because he was taken from prison. He was taken from judgment. So there is a vacancy that has been created. And so heaven is saying, who shall declare his generation? So we are looking at the aspect of Jesus' operation. The aspect we are looking at is his speaking. All right? Is his speaking. And that's what we want to concentrate on at this time. In order for Jesus to be able to speak through me, through Pastor Pete, through Evangelist Peter, through you, in order for Jesus to speak, there are 2 things that needs to happen. Now that he's not physically present, he can only speak through his spirit. That's the idea of the book of the Acts of the Apostles. Everything he does, he will do by his spirit. Okay? So in order for him to be able to speak through me, through Pastor Pete, through Pastor Peter, 2 things must happen. And the first thing that must happen is what we call inspiration. He must inspire you with his own thoughts. Are you still with me? He must inspire you with his own thoughts. He must invite you to come to a place where your thoughts and his thoughts synchronize. It's a spiritual invitation for you to come to that frequency. You are tuned like a transistor radio to that frequency where you can pick the thoughts of God. So there must be inspiration if God is going to speak through my vessel. There must be inspiration if God is going to speak through your vessel. If God doesn't have a ground to inspire, then his thoughts cannot be captured. And if his thoughts cannot be captured, his words cannot be spoken. So there is a first requirement, which is inspiration. You know, and when I came into the service and mommy began to prophesy, I said, she's preaching my message. So I was asking God for him to reduce the prophecy so that I will still have something to, because that's the example of what I want to teach. Jesus wants to speak. She just gave us the example of what I'm talking about. Jesus wants to speak. And you find there are so many platforms that speak, like the legislative chamber speaks, but it might be impossible to find the perspective of Jesus in that chamber. There are so many things that speak. So Jesus wants to be able to continue to speak, even though he was taken from prison, he was taken from judgment, he was cut off before his time, but he wants to speak. So if he's going to speak, the first thing that will happen is called what? Inspiration. In the book of Job, we have, the way the book of Job is arranged, meanwhile, it will interest you to know that the book of Job was written in a very primitive environment of the revelations of God. Theologically, if we are to arrange the books of the Bible in the order in which they were written, the first book of the Bible would have been the book of Job. I know you know that. So Job was written first. Even though there were revelations that Moses wrote that were more into the past than what is written in the book of Job, but in terms of chronology, Job was the first book that was written. Now, if you study the book of Job, you're going to find a very primitive, theological environment, and that was because of the nature of the understanding of the ways of God in those days. Are you there? So the idea of the book of Job is that the philosophy or wisdom is captured, is sustained with cardinals. And what I mean by that is this. Pastor Pitt in the whole of, what's the name of the city? Rochester. All right. I just got here yesterday. So maybe in this city, it has been found that he is so wise. So he's given an office of a cardinal. So that anytime there's confusion, we need some explanations, a strange event takes place, a strange occurrence finds expression, we come to him to get perspective of what has happened. All right? So, if you check in the book of Job, Job was that kind of person in the East. So if there was anything like that in all of the East, they'll have to travel to come and meet Job, and then Job will now say, okay, this is the explanation of this. Do you understand that? Until one of those philosophers was now afflicted. So his colleagues in the other parts of the world had to travel to come interpret, to come explain. To come explain the reason behind his problem. So it was in that discussion that you could actually, you could follow the thread of their worldview, you could follow the thread of their perspectives, you could follow the thread of their interpretation. You will see that one of those philosophers, his interpretation of Job's condition was that it was a product of human merit. That means there were some evil things that Job did, and what is happening to him right now is a result of some secret evil things that he has done. So you could see the thread of their philosophy, the texture of their philosophy. And in that argument, Job held on to his own righteousness. So Job was operating and debating from the standpoint of self-righteousness. Are you there? Now, at the end of the debate, they were unable to arrive at a conclusion because they could not best Job in the debate. So there was a time of silence, there was a break. It was during the break period that one of the lecturer assistants that accompanied one of the philosophers, there was a young man that accompanied one of the philosophers. He now said, according to tradition, it's supposed to be that years should speak and length of days should teach wisdom. What he means by that is that the elderly people are the ones